"Here, let me help you with that, sweetheart," Maeve whispered softly, kneeling beside the elderly man in the wheelchair. Her voice carried a tenderness that seemed to quiet the busy diner around them. The man's trembling hands struggled with the spoon, and she gently steadied it, guiding the warm soup to his lips. "There you go, nice and slow." Rain drummed against the windows of Harper's Diner that November evening, each drop catching the glow of the neon sign outside. Maeve Callahan had worked the evening shift for 3 years now, her teal uniform pressed carefully despite its worn edges. At 24, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical bun, her eyes holding depths of understanding that came from weathering storms too early in life. The elderly man, Lawrence, had become a regular over the past month. Each Tuesday and Friday, a care facility van would drop him off, and he'd sit alone in the corner booth, staring at his meal with frustration clouding his weathered face. The accident that took his mobility had also taken something from his spirit, Maeve noticed. But she saw past the vacant stare. She saw father, a man who once stood tall. "My daughter, she used to make soup like this," Lawrence murmured, his words slurred but filled with longing. Maeve's heart tightened. "Tell me about her," she said softly, sitting across from him, ignoring the impatient glances from other tables. What Maeve didn't notice was the man standing frozen near the entrance. Grayson Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries, had stopped mid-step, his expensive overcoat dripping rain onto the checkered floor. His steel blue eyes locked onto the scene before him, a waitress feeding his father with the kind of patience and tenderness he himself had forgotten how to show. Grayson had built an empire in 9 years, transforming grief and rage into ambition after the accident that killed his mother and left his father trapped in silence. He'd hired the best care, the finest facilities, convinced himself that money was love translated into action. But watching this stranger show his father more humanity in 5 minutes than he'd managed in 5 years, something cracked inside his carefully constructed armor. He approached slowly, his presence commanding attention. "Excuse me," his voice cut through the warm moment, sharp and cold. "What exactly are you doing?" Maeve stood quickly, her cheeks flushing. "I'm sorry, sir. Your father, Lawrence, needed help, and And you thought you'd just insert yourself into his care?" Grayson's words came out harsher than he intended, old pain masquerading as anger. Lawrence's hand suddenly moved, grasping weakly at Maeve's sleeve. "Kind girl," he managed. Something shifted in Grayson's expression, a flicker of the boy he'd once been before responsibility calcified his heart. He studied Maeve more carefully now, noticing the academy textbooks peeking from her bag beneath the counter, the way her hands bore small scars that spoke of sacrifice, the exhaustion shadowing eyes that still chose to see the good in people. "I apologize," Grayson said finally, the words unfamiliar in his mouth. "That was uncalled for." Over the following weeks, something unexpected unfolded. Grayson found himself returning to the diner, initially telling himself it was to check on his father's well-being, but truthfully, he came to witness something he'd lost, the simple, profound act of human connection. Maeve never asked for anything. She simply showed up, night after night, treating Lawrence with dignity that no expensive care facility had managed to provide. One evening, as Maeve helped Lawrence with his coffee, Grayson finally asked, "Why do you do this? You're not paid to care this much." Maeve looked up, her eyes meeting his with quiet strength. "My father, he died when I was 19. He was a police officer, gave everything to help others. Before he passed, he was sick for months, and I'd feed him, talk to him, just be present. It's what love looks like when words run out." She paused, her voice softening. "Your father reminds me that kindness isn't an obligation, Mr. Hartwell. It's a privilege." The revelation struck Grayson like lightning. This young woman, working double shifts to support her mother and save for the police academy, still found space in her heart for a stranger. Meanwhile, he, with all his wealth and resources, had been rationing his humanity like it was a limited commodity. The breakthrough came on a frigid December night. Grayson arrived at the diner to find it unusually quiet. Maeve was sitting with Lawrence, and his father was attempting to speak, his face contorted with effort. "Son," Lawrence finally managed, his eyes finding Grayson's. "Proud of you, but come closer." Grayson's composure shattered. He dropped to his knees beside the wheelchair, and for the first time in years he let tears fall. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry I've been absent. I thought providing was enough. I didn't know how to just be with you." Maeve quietly stepped back, giving them space, her own eyes glistening. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but Grayson began showing up. Truly showing up. He'd sit with his father, learning to feed him, to listen to the fragmented stories, to hold his hand without awkwardness. He established a foundation to help families caring for disabled loved ones, ensuring they had both resources and respite. And he offered Maeve a full scholarship to the police academy, which she initially refused, until he framed it as an investment in someone who embodied the kind of servant leadership the world desperately needed. 8 months later, on a warm summer evening, the three of them sat outside Harper's Diner at a small table. Lawrence had regained some movement through intensive therapy Grayson had arranged, and though his words still came slowly, his eyes sparkled with life rekindled. "You taught him to see again," Lawrence said to Maeve, his hand patting hers gently. Maeve shook her head, smiling. "No, Lawrence, you both taught me something too. That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let someone care, and the kindest thing we can do is show up when it's hard." Grayson looked at the young woman who'd redirected the entire trajectory of his life through simple, consistent kindness. "You know what you said that night about kindness being a privilege?" He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me back my father, and somehow you gave me back myself." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, three unlikely souls sat together, proof that wealth means nothing if your heart stays bankrupt, and that the smallest acts of compassion can resurrect what we thought was lost forever. The moral was clear as the evening star emerging above them. Kindness doesn't require resources or status. It requires only the courage to see another's humanity and the willingness to honor it. And sometimes feeding someone's father with gentle patience can nourish an entire family's soul back to wholeness. In a world that often rewards indifference, may we remember that our true inheritance isn't measured in dollars, but in moments of grace we offer to strangers who become family. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.